Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum. First of all, I want to thank you for honoring me with this. We've never, of course, met each other, and I consider you a friend.
पहली बात तो ये है कि आप ये बताइए कि आपका ये मैं इसको कहता हूँ क्रॉस कल्चरल जर्नी जो है ये कैसा एक्सपीरियंस है?
That journey, I don't know why you know that. It started 50 years ago. मैंने जिंदगी का तकरीबन 80% adult life यहीं गुजारी है. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि पाकिस्तान से मैं जुदा हो गया हूँ. We go to Pakistan very often. Unfortunately, COVID ने जब से visit किया है, it's been a problem. लेकिन I'm culturally, मेरी family, मेरे grandkids are still tied to Pakistan. And जैसे मैंने आपको बोला था, I can speak conversational Urdu very well. लेकिन high level Urdu, I'll have to search a word.
जी
I'm not proud of it, but that's the way it is. I hope I can give you a grand picture, just one experience very early on. Sure, जिसको culture shock कहते हैं, वो क्या होता है? I did my engineering in Pakistan. यहाँ सीधा आ गया, वहाँ मैंने एक दिन में काम नहीं किया. I came to Berkeley. दूसरे या तीसरे दिन, I had to go visit graduate advisor अपने courses pick करने के लिए. You have to do that here. There are no pre-established courses that you take. Some are, but others you have to talk to your advisor. उस advisor का नाम था Professor Dr. Albert Einstein. Not the same Einstein, but he was his son. Very prominent professor himself of hydraulics. एक तो शुरू में आदमी आता है, it's in great awe of coming to this country, great awe of coming to Berkeley, and then having to meet a person named Albert Einstein. दूसरे दिन 7 बजे उसने मुझे अपॉइंटमेंट दी थी. 6:30 पहुंचे. एक आदमी से पूछा वो हाइड्रोलिक्स डिपार्टमेंट कहाँ है, उन्होंने बताया. अंदर गया तो एक आदमी फर्श पे कोई फ्लूइड गिरा हुआ था, उस पर माप कर रहा था. This was a hydraulics lab. मैंने उससे पूछा कि where is Professor Einstein? तो कहता है वो अंदर एक जो ऑफिस है उसमें जाके बैठ जाओ, वो अभी आ जाएगा. तो मैं बैठ गया. थोड़ी देर बाद वही आदमी आ गया अंदर. कहता है hi, I'm Al. I just about fell off my chair. अभी ये बंदा माप कर रहा था फर्श. तो वो कहता है कि I have one question for you. Were you in military? I said no. Then why are you calling me sir? Call me Al. Has etched in my mind. That was, of course, the general culture at the university level. You generally didn't call anybody sir. You addressed them by their first name. Believe it or not, now this was Berkeley, which it was a hippie town. Hippieism was nurtured, grew in San Francisco, migrated to Berkeley, which is only across the bay. और वहीं उसने परवरिश. सारी सड़कों पे हिप्पी नजर आते थे. लेकिन एजुकेशन लेवल वाज elite. सिगरेट क्लास के अंदर, उस वक्त सिगरेट की प्रोहिबिशन नहीं थी. क्लास के अंदर लोग पीते थे, including myself. Culturally, that's your first exposure, like a bomb blasting in your head. दूसरी बात यह है कि I should preface my comments with the facts that America is a vast country. इसमें कई cultures, हर religion, हर language, हर class of people exists here. So that's another aspect that I have to be very careful about. We've lived mostly in the West Coast. West Coast is California, Seattle, Oregon. ये states ज़्यादातर liberal or progressive. Midwest, which are the central states, are normally conservative, very religious, almost to a fault. Slavery was nurtured. So जो war, just civil war हुई है between the South and the North. And culturally, they are still very diverse.
अच्छा प्रवेश साहब आपके जाने आप स्टडी के लिए गए थे या कोई और मोटिवेशन थी आप?
Study, first and foremost. I came directly to Berkeley, did my master's. ख्याल ये था कि मैं study करके वापस आ जाऊंगा. That's what I thought. But then you start working here. And the culture here, the work culture is so different. First of all, I should tell you कि मुझे पाकिस्तानी work culture का only through episodes पता है. मैंने
ठीक
वहाँ एक दिन भी काम नहीं किया, at least not in a professional setting. But it's totally different. Once you get used to it, it's very tough to come back. Over time, you get married. I went back to Pakistan to get married. You have kids, and it becomes very, very difficult to come back. ये नहीं कि आप पाकिस्तान को miss नहीं करते, family को miss नहीं करते, culture को miss नहीं करते, but you're so embedded here in the life that it becomes difficult. Culturally, no, you had a question about family life.
Yes, exactly.
Family life वही है. At least in my generation, we still have the same limits. We still have the same boundaries. We still have similar practices. Our kids and grandkids pray regularly. As a matter of fact, my grandson leads. He's not overly religious, prays 5 times a day, and actually leads prayers at home. He leads our prayers at home. So, and they used to go when they were kids. to Sunday school, masjid. They have read Quran. So we have not shed the important parts of our Muslim heritage, Pakistani heritage, and the cultural aspects that are beautiful. But on the other hand, I should say, Islam is more reflected in here, in this country, within Muslims and outside Muslims, even among Americans, and they're not Muslims, more reflected here. The beauty of Islam, the essence of Islam, than in Pakistan.
इंटरेस्टिंग। अच्छा, मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि ये जो आपने एनवायरनमेंट अपना फैमिली का जो बताया है, इट्स रियली वंडरफुल। इसमें जो मेन स्ट्रीम कल्चर है उससे कभी आपको कोई टेंशन्स महसूस हुई हैं इसको सोशलाइज करने में, इस ओरिएंटेशन को कंटिन्यू रखने के लिए?
No, in fact, I've been here, I said 50 years. I've never touched a drink, Coca-Cola ke alawa, Diet Coke. I was in executive positions with the company, and we would go to a lot of meetings. My clients go, you have drinks, not me personally, but what's the beauty is Americans never ask, why don't you drink? They understand it. They would drink. They would drink in front of me. But they would never ask you why you don't. Irony ये है, जितनी दफा पाकिस्तान गया हूँ, जो पुराने पाकिस्तानी दोस्त हैं, वो पूछते हैं कि why don't you drink?
Interesting.
No, I'm serious. Once I was so fed up with it that I said, this is your guilty conscience speaking. You don't want to know why I don't drink. You know why I don't. तुम्हारा जो conscience है, he needs to ask. Virtually no American has ever asked me that question because they understand. दूसरी बात यह है कि there are important cultural aspects, especially you want to know about the work life. Work life is very different. Just like that professor, most of your bosses want to be addressed by their first name, not sir, not Mr., with their first names. You respect them deeply, but you respect them for their work ethic and their knowledge and their performance. Those are the criteria. And those are the criteria which we always were measured by. For your promotions, आपकी जो प्रमोशन होती है इस मुल्क में, वो किसी बाइसेस पे नहीं होती, वो इन्हीं तीन चीजों पे होती है. How hard do you work? आपकी वर्क एथिक क्या है? And how do you perform? Very strict metrics हैं for performance.
अच्छा परवेज साहब, अभी थोड़ी देर पहले आपने जो बात की थी ना कि इस्लाम की जो एसेंस है उसकी सही रिफ्लेक्शन यहाँ पे है अमेरिका में पाकिस्तान की निस्बत, तो इसको थोड़ा सा एलेबोरेट करेंगे आप फर्दर के आप क्यों ऐसा सोचते हैं, इसकी रीजंस क्या है?
मैं बिल्कुल मामूली से बात शुरू करूंगा. I walk almost daily. We have a track behind our home. और कई लोग नजर आते. Almost every single one of them. They don't know me. They would smile and say hello. Almost every single one of them. You go to shopping. मॉल में चले जाएं, किसी स्टोर में चले जाएंगे, they would treat you with smile, say hello, how are you doing? ग्रोसरी स्टोर में जाएं, ग्रोसरी स्टोर में आप कैश रजिस्टर पे आए, सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन ये होगा, did you get everything you need? Do you need any help? हेल्प का मतलब होता है कि अगर आपका ग्रोसरी यहाँ से लेके बाहर गाड़ी तक जानी है तो आपको एक बंदा साथ लेके जाएगा, वो कार्ड में लेके जाएगा. अगर आपने कोई चीज खरीदी है और आप महीने बाद 2 महीने बाद कहेंगे मुझे पसंद नहीं आया, स्पेशली विद सम स्टोर्स, दे विल रिटर्न इट, नो क्वेश्चंस आस्क्ड. एक बड़ा डिफरेंस ये भी है कि यहाँ नेशनल स्टोर्स हैं, दे हैव नेशनल रेपुटेशन टू प्रोटेक्ट, दे हैव नेशनल ट्रेनिंग ऑन कस्टमर सर्विस, and they live by it. थोड़ा भी customer परेशान हो, नाराज हो, disappointed हो, so that affects their business. They don't want that. So as a widely, American people are very generous in nature and generous in form. American governance and politics is very different. जितनी मुश्किल अमेरिका ने दुनिया में डाली हुई है at the government level, politics level, diametrically opposite. So this is the incongruence between American nature in general. हालांकि ये democracy very difficult to figure out.
ये जो डिस्कनेक्ट है सोसाइटी में और गवर्नमेंट में, इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं?
सबसे पहले है कि even in democratic countries, which USA, perhaps the most democratic in the world, there are differences. अभी मैंने आपको बताया था cultural differences.
ठीक.
Southeast is conservative. I know if I had ever lived in Southeast, it would be tougher. They would still be very kind, still be very generous. But Islamophobia, nationalism, what I call faux nationalism, fake nationalism, and all of those things are very common there. That's one of the reasons. वो अभी तक उनका slave mentality for the most part still is there. California is different. जो मैं आपको story बता रहा हूँ, I'm a product of that influence. The influence is in a more liberal culture, in a California culture for the most part, in a culture which is really the biggest melting. White population in California is actually not a majority any longer. Hispanic is. Indians are large groups, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, those are becoming much more dominant. So jo ethnicity sari aaye, the amalgamation of all those cultures, the beauties of all those cultures is what's represented here. And maybe that's the reason for a disconnect. Politics can be very, very quick. Jo ek open secret hai yahan, although America is democratic, president is not necessarily elected by majority. It's a very different, strange makeup. Clinton won the most vote, but Trump won the election. So influences जो emerge होते हैं, there's a disproportionate influence.
हाँ ठीक है, वो तो थोड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स इलेक्टोरल सिस्टम भी है ना, इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज है, वो इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली, तो वो उसमें ये चीजें हुई हैं. इसकी और भी एग्जांपल्स हिस्ट्री में भी एक दो मिलती हैं, लेकिन रिसेंटली अल गोर के इलेक्शन में हुआ, फिर क्लिंटन के इलेक्शन में हुआ. ये एक बात और बता दूं कि आई डोंट नो द जनरल अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ हाउ कि यहाँ सेनेट के इलेक्शन कैसे होते हैं. यहाँ 100 senators without regard to population sends 2 senators. So California, जिसकी population है 55 million, I'm sorry, which sends 55 electoral votes, has the same number of senators as Wyoming. California का एक congressional district जहाँ हम रहते हैं, उसकी population is more than the entire state. लेकिन we only have 2 senators. So there's a disproportionate electoral or senatorial influence at the national level by smaller states. अच्छा प्रोफेसर साहब, ये जो है ना पॉलिटिक्स और स्टेट क्राफ्ट से हम सोसाइटी में जरा वापस आते हैं, क्योंकि आप किताबें भी पढ़ते रहते हैं और रिकमेंड भी करते हैं. मुझे याद है आपने मुझे एक किताब रिकमेंड की थी 2 साल पहले, वो थी एजुकेटेड, तारा वेस्टओवर की. उसमें मैं आपको छोटी सी स्टोरी सुनाऊं इंटरेस्टिंग, के उसी से हम अपनी बात को भी रिलेट करेंगे. वो मैंने पढ़ी और मैं कायद आज़म यूनिवर्सिटी में जो मेरी क्लास थी, तो मैंने वो स्टोरी बच्चों के साथ शेयर की, स्टूडेंट्स के साथ. मैंने कहा देखें, वो बच्ची जो थी उसने यूनिवर्सिटी जब ज्वाइन की तो उसके 10 साल के अंदर उसने दुनिया की बेहतरीन यूनिवर्सिटी से PhD की, और वो उससे पहले होम स्कूलर थी, छुप के पढ़ती थी. तो जो मुझे पहला जो रिस्पांस आया क्लास से एक स्टूडेंट का, उसने कहा सर देखें, ये अमेरिका की स्टोरी है, पाकिस्तान में ऐसे नहीं हो सकता. क्यों नहीं हो सकता? पाकिस्तान में हो रहा. ये जो माइंडसेट है कि, और इसके साथ सोशल चेंज को रिलेट करते हुए किस तरह से आप देखते हैं कि सोशल चेंज अमेरिका में आप हैं 50 साल से, बहुत सी आपने मूवमेंट्स देखी होंगी, बहुत सी वहाँ पे तब्दीलियां देखी होंगी, पाकिस्तान पे भी आपकी नजर की है, उससे वाकिफ हैं आप. तो क्या कंपैरिजन है रिगार्डिंग सोशल चेंज इन सोसाइटी, दोनों कल्चर्स में, दोनों सोसाइटीज में? First of all, just a bit on that story, Sarah Westover's story. She got a scholarship to Cambridge. She was born in a culture जो ऐसे लगेगा जैसे Muslim traditional religious culture. Mormonism is very different. Other facets of life here. They don't drink. They don't even drink coffee. About smoking, but she was born in a closed-neck culture. His father or family didn't want
her to go to college. Even school भी वो पता नहीं कैसे गई. Bharat, who ended up with a scholarship and did a PhD. Actually, America did nothing for her. Absolutely nothing. What happened to her? She was self-motivated. आपके लिए इतनी बड़ी examples हैं. I read about TCF. Yes, the Citizen Foundation, TCF. आपको पता है कि उन्होंने कितने schools established किए हैं in the poorer communities in Pakistan. From zero to, I believe, there are now about 15 to 1600 schools. और बच्चे आते हैं उनमें बिल्कुल destitute families. Or some have become doctors, educated professionals, engineers, and even teachers. So Pakistani culture में all it needs is opportunity. And opportunity हर एक के लिए. हमारे यहाँ मुश्किलें बहुत ज़्यादा. लेकिन that story was not a story about entitlement. It was a story about effort. Pakistan mein most of the stories are considered to be Amir banda hai, ye kar sakta hai. Mostly right. Kei examples in Pakistan. A person grew from almost zero to nothing. Dr. Abdul Salam.
अच्छा प्रवेश साहब, मैं आपके ना पोस्ट में और आपकी जब भी ज़ाहिर पोस्ट के थ्रू ही हम शेयर करते हैं चीज़ों को, तो मैं महसूस करता हूँ काफ़ी ऑप्टिमिज्म है आपके अंदर, काफ़ी आप ऑप्टिमिस्ट रहते हैं रिगार्डिंग पाकिस्तान फ्यूचर. और तो उस ऑप्टिमिज्म की क्या आपकी रीजंस क्या है?
People, and again, everybody is a product of their own nurturing, their own growth. जो लोगों से मैं मिलता हूँ one on one, पता नहीं हमें क्या हो जाता है जब हम इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं. One on one, I'm sometimes stunned by how bright they are. Even the uneducated ones. Some of the things I read on Facebook, they can be disappointing, but the point of view that they express from their point of view is impressive. I think the nation in the right hands, I don't want to go into politics, especially in the hands of a person like Imran Khan. Imran Khan has many issues. He's not perfect, but he has integrity. If he can set the right examples, the nation would prosper. The other comes from the fact that if you look back at us historically, we were there once. You are much younger than I am. Pakistan at one time was given as an example of a fast-growing Asian nation. Korea, which I would consider South Korea now, came over to look at Pakistan's 5-year plan to take back as a model. Korea had no resource, had just come off big war, was devastated, not an educational level. You can look at where they are today. Now, same people in the North Korea peninsula, consider the comparison. Same people, but different culture, different leadership. Once we find the leadership, please embrace him, even with all of his quirks. मैं यही कहता हूँ कि हमें जब भी कोई लीडर मिल गया काम का, I think Imran is heading in that direction, regardless of his naysayers. I think we have a lot of good stuff to come, lot more natural resources.
एक आपने ना अभी एक जुमला बोला था कि इंडिविजुअली आप जब लोगों से इंटरेक्ट करते हैं तो बड़े ब्राइट पीपल, अमेजिंग इंटरेक्शन होता है, लेकिन ये है कि जब इकट्ठे होते हैं तो पता नहीं हमें क्या हो जाता है. अच्छा, ये जो बात है ना, ये जो जुमले का दूसरा हिस्सा है कि जब हम इकट्ठे होते हैं तो पता नहीं हमें क्या हो, इस पे थोड़ा मैं चाहूंगा कि आप मजीद गुफ्तगू करें. ये बड़ी कॉमन ऑब्जर्वेशन है, जो बाहर से लोग आते हैं ना मुख्तलिफ सेमिनार्स में, तो वो भी एग्जैक्टली ये बात करते हैं. ये मैंने बारहा ये बात, तो मेरी अपनी ऑब्जर्वेशन भी है कि इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन में हम टीम वर्क में हमारे प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. आपके ख्याल में ये प्रॉब्लम्स जो हैं ये क्या है इनकी, इसको जरा अनपैक करें कि इसकी क्या वजूहात क्या है?
If I can do that, I'll be a great social scientist. I'm in a wrong field. Educationally, I'm an engineer. एक बात बता दूं आपको. Individually, for some reason, the true essence, the true heart of a person is reflected. We become a lot more logical. Generally speaking, लेकिन in a mass mentality, in a group mentality that flourishes with large groups, we reflect each other's essence. We become much more influenced by that mass, whether you call it mentality, intellect, noise. It creates something different within us. Uski wajah, only a social scientist. You would be a much better person to answer that question that I would have often dwelled on it. Frankly, I've read books on it, and I get even more confused. कि ये क्या वजह है कि हम as a person to person are so kind, so generous, so empathetic, so emphatically true to our inner self. लेकिन जब हम लोगों के साथ होते हैं, especially at a street level, we adopt a street, वो कहते हैं ना street का लबादा पहन लेते हैं.
ऐसे ही है, बिल्कुल है.
Now that's an Urdu word. So we cloak ourselves. So that's the difficult. It's very hard to explain. Lekin when you look at the individuals, it's very different.
अच्छा, मैं वेरी क्विक, क्योंकि सुनना आपको है बेसिकली, तो इस पे एक थोड़ी सी ऑब्जर्वेशंस अपनी शेयर करूंगा. मैंने लीड किया है एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन को, और मैंने जो बहुत अच्छे इंस्टीट्यूशनल लीडर्स देखे, उनको मैंने उनके जाने के बाद, मतलब उनके छोड़ जाने के बाद इंस्टीट्यूशन को, उस इंस्टीट्यूशन को बाद में भी देखा. अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो उनके होते हुए उन्होंने इंस्टीट्यूशन को जिस तरह बेहतर किया, उठाया, और वो बड़ा एक मतलब मजे का माहौल हमें वहां पे नजर आया उस लीडरशिप के अंडर. जो ही उस लीडरशिप ने छोड़ा, उसके कुछ महीनों के बाद वो सारा रिवर्स हो. तो उससे डिसअपॉइंटमेंट ये होती है कि भाई हम इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज क्यों नहीं कर पाते, वो चीजें पर्सनलाइज क्यों रहती हैं. एक और मैं एग्जांपल शेयर करूंगा. लाहौर में एक ट्रैफिक पुलिस के जो चीफ आए, उन्होंने एक जमाने में ट्रांसपोर्ट को बड़ा डिसेंटली ऑर्गेनाइज किया फॉर द पैसेंजर्स. थोड़ा इनका वो फेयर आप बढ़ा लें, लेकिन इनको इस तरह से भेड़ बकरियों की तरह खड़े करके और घुसेड़ के ना लेके जाएं. जितनी देर वो लाहौर में वो लीड करते रहे पुलिस फोर्स को, वो सारी अरेंजमेंट चलती रही. जो ही उनकी ट्रांसफर हुई, उसके बाद वो वापस रिवर्ट बैक कर. लेकिन स्टिल कुछ ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं हमारे पास जहां पे जो सस्टेन कर रहे हैं, जिसमें खासतौर पे मोटरवे पुलिस है, जिसमें 1122 है, लम्स एज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन है. उनसे उम्मीद पैदा होती है कि भाई इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन जो है वो पॉसिबल है. इस पे कुछ स्टडीज भी हुई हैं कि भाई ये इंस्टीट्यूशन क्यों वर्क कर और बाकी क्यों वर्क नहीं कर. तो लेकिन ये है कि ये प्रॉब्लम बड़ी हद तक है कि हम उस थ्रेशोल्ड को क्रॉस नहीं कर पाते जिससे चीजें जो हैं वो सस्टेनेबल रहें. ये हमारा प्रॉब्लम बिल्कुल है. अच्छा, इसमें यहाँ पे चूंकि आपकी रीडिंग बहुत अच्छी है, मैं थोड़ा हेगल को यहाँ पे लेके आता हूँ अपने साथ. मैं एक प्रोफेसर साहब हैं हमारे, पाकिस्तानी हैं, कायद आज़म यूनिवर्सिटी के, तो उन्होंने कोट किया लास्ट टाइम हेगल को, कि हेगल ने सब कॉन्टिनेंट के बारे में एक जुमला स्पेसिफिकली लिखा. उसने कहा कि इंडियंस हैव नो सेंस ऑफ हिस्ट्री. जो उनका सेंटेंस है हेगल का, उसपे उनकी असलम सैयद साहब हैं जो हिस्ट्री के प्रोफेसर, उनकी इंटरप्रिटेशन ये है कि हिस्ट्री जो है वो कॉज इफेक्ट रिलेशनशिप पे आप उसको प्रोसेस को अंडरस्टैंड कर. हेगल ने ये बात इसलिए कही कि इंडिया में कॉज इफेक्ट रिलेशनशिप को अंडरस्टैंड करने की कोशिश नहीं की जाती. यहाँ पे या डिवाइन इंटरवेंशन आ जाती है, या लक आ जाती है, या चांस आ जाता है, या कोई और एक्सप्लेनेशन आ जाती है जो उसको लॉजिकली जो है उस प्रोसेस को हम मानते ही नहीं. इसलिए ना तो हमारी जो हिस्टोरियोग्राफी है उसको हिस्ट्री माना जाता है, ना ही हमारे जो सोसाइटी का जो उसमें चेंज का चूंकि प्रोसेस ही नहीं है, साल से सोसाइटी ओवरऑल वहीं की वहीं रहती है. इसलिए ये जुमला जो है वो एप्टली कहा गया कि इंडियंस हैव नो सेंस. इस पे आप की क्या इंसाइट है, आप क्या
I think this is a great question and one that I've been a deep student of. आपको सिर्फ organizational culture की तरफ ले जाता हूँ, क्योंकि you started with an organization.
ठीक.
कि जो आए वो छोड़ के गए, उनकी legacy was not followed. The word culture, for many it's a very esoteric term. It's not easily understood. अगर culture में ये चीजें are not deeply penetrated, are not deeply embedded, तो एक leader आएगा, whatever miracle he has with him, that goes away with him exiting, him or her. मेरी जो company है, when I joined them 45 years before I left, I only worked for one firm. They had 150 people. When I left them, we had 1,500. We had 2 offices. We had 45 offices nationally when I left. Now, we were not the largest company in the nation by 100 miles, but we are one of the best company in the business we were in. Environmental engineering. एक leader आया, दूसरा आया, तीसरा आया, चौथा, कई leaders आए. One thing that we always maintained was company's culture. It never left us. As a matter of fact, any leader जो culture को grow नहीं कर सका, he was let go, he or she was let go within months. Culture is the most important facet of any organization. I'm assuming here the professor you're talking about or the leader that you're talking about influenced things because he was or she was forceful, because it was in him to do it. Sometimes that's a very temporary staying power. जब तक वो culture में embed नहीं हो जाए. If you don't have customer service culture, you can say as many words as you want. You'll never have a good customer service.
Exactly.
Amazon Pakistan में भी obviously it's much more dominant here. When they say they are great at addressing your needs, you'd be shocked. एक टीवी आप उससे खरीदें, 2 महीने बाद वापस कर on their expense. They'll pay for the mailing charge. You'll pay zero. एक यहाँ बहुत बड़ी कंपनी है Costco. वो भी सेम है. 2 महीने 3 महीने यूज किए हुए टेलीफोन they return it. Why? Because they think that may cost them 2% of their total revenue. Grow multiple of that percent because of that service. I don't know if you have read any books, How to Grow Organizations, MBA type. I would say strictly, but very interesting. Organizations grow. And one of the biggest facets is a culture. Now, talking about sense of history, that we have no sense of history because our history is corrupt. I'm going to be serious about it. The history books we read about India in Pakistan is from our point of view. I'm sure what they read in India would be from India. And history has only one point of view, and that cannot be Pakistani or Indian. Those are the facts. जब वो history आ जाएगी तो we'll be honest to ourselves. हमने कभी book पढ़ी है, एक book है Taj Mahal. It's mainly about Mughal Empire and a lot of stereotypes. I won't go into it. They have been a big part of our history. We are quote unquote proud of them. We say we ruled India for 300 years. Actually, we didn't rule India for 300 years.
ठीक है, बिल्कुल ठीक है.
Central Asians came and ruled India.
Exactly.
And we left India when we didn't have them. Not our history. That's Central Asian history.
Exactly.
So anyway, it's fascinating to read history from somebody else's perspective. But I agree with that person that we have no sense of history. When we teach history in our own organization, by the way, my company was totally employee-owned, means every employee was a company owner based on their number of shares. So when we taught people about culture, we taught people about company's history. As a matter of fact, we even wrote a book for the company to distribute to the company on company history. Those are some of the most important facets that you have to remember when you reflect back and connect the present with the past.
अच्छा, ये बात जो आपने अपनी कंपनी के हवाले से की है ना, ये मेरी अपनी ऑब्जर्वेशन भी है. मैंने यूएस स्टडीज में एक एमफिल लेवल का कोर्स किया था कायदे आज़म यूनिवर्सिटी. तो मुझे ये फर्क महसूस हुआ था कि स्टोरी राइटिंग और स्टोरी टेलिंग का भी एक बहुत बड़ा फर्क है. स्टोरीज जो है अमेरिकन सोसाइटी में वो रिकॉर्डेड स्टोरीज है. हमारे यहाँ स्टोरीज जो हैं वो रिकॉर्डेड स्टोरीज नहीं है. सीना गजट जो एग्जाम्पल्स हैं वो हम करते हैं, लेकिन स्टोरी राइटिंग स्टोरी टेलिंग उस तरह वो रिकॉर्ड पे नहीं है. इसलिए अभी बहुत सी एग्जाम्पल्स जो हैं दूसरों के लिए वो लर्निंग का बायस नहीं बन कि कोई वो रिकॉर्ड में होगी तो कोई उसको पढ़ेगा या देखेगा या सुनेगा. तो ये भी एक डिफरेंस मुझे महसूस. प्रोफेसर साहब, एक मैं आपसे जानना चाहूंगा कि अगर हम पाकिस्तान में कल्चर एक उसमें इम्प्रूवमेंट के लिए, उसमें बेहतरी के लिए, इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन के लिए हम स्टार्ट करें, कोई इनिशिएटिव किस किस्म का होना चाहिए, क्या करें?
That's such a loaded question. I want to connect back to the last comment you made and I'll answer this. Stories are absolutely important, as you know that, and to preserve them is important. Several years ago, the business school, particularly Harvard, centered their business training on stories. They call them case studies. But what's a case story? It's a case study. It's an actual story. You don't learn business schools. If you're abstract, things don't work. If you tell a story about how Nordstrom became such a highly revered, service-centered organization through a story, it would not go there. So, आपके universities में जहाँ आप पढ़ाते, are there case studies? Are there stories being told? Many stories in Pakistan that make sense in our life. I had posted, and it started with a small tree that we had planted. It became big. It was a loquat tree, and that reminded me of how our life is influenced by how a tree grows. TCF is a good example. It started with 6 people taking the initiative, starting it with their own money. Clinic hai, it's called Ummah Clinic, United Muslim Medical Association, started by 5 or 6 medical students at UCLA, and it grew. Its free clinic in a downtrodden neighborhood grew and grew and grew. And now it treats thousands of patients every year. That's like that tree growing from a small seed. There's so many stories that need to be told in Pakistan. You are a professor. I'm sure you do that because I know you read a lot. I know friends that have not read a book, their coursework, because how can you have observation? How can you expand our thought process? If you're not benefiting from books, this is part of our story too. We read as many books as we can. We should read fiction, history, social sciences, environment, whatever. That's crucial for us to grow. हमारे पास time नहीं होता, हम कहते हैं time नहीं. Obama used to read 5 books a month when he was the president of the United States. He must have, Clinton did the same. And it showed in Obama. It showed in Clinton. Trump never read a book, and it showed in him.
People, I agree with you, and I love you so much for your passion for reading as well. थोड़ा सा ये बताइए कि हमारे यहाँ तो जो सिचुएशन है ना, रीडिंग कल्चर बहुत डिक्लाइन पे है अनफॉर्चुनेटली। जहाँ पे आप हैं यहाँ पे क्या सिचुएशन है? ये आपने एलीट लीडर्स की तो बात की है, generally culture क्या है रीडिंग के हवाले?
Not good. If you're not a good reader, you generally struggle to be a good writer. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. A lot of people are prolific writers without reading much. So don't take it as a stereotype. A person like me with a limited mind needs to read a lot to write a lot.
थोड़ा सा वो कसरे नफसी से काम ले रहे हैं, उर्दू मुश्किल है थोड़ी सी ये। मैं आपके पोस्ट बड़ा एंजॉय करता हूँ, और सैन लाहौर से वो भी अक्सर आपके पोस्ट पे कमेंट कर रहे होते हैं।
Stan is a good example.
हाँ,
he says he doesn't read. What you read is, I'm writing, and you say, my God, he's so good at it. What I'm saying is, it's not, I don't want to stereotype. But going back to reading interest comes very early. I was reading when I was 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. My family used to move a lot when I was a little kid between Sindh and Punjab every year, actually. And in Sindh, I started in English medium school in grade 6. So I was reading English in grade 2nd. When I would come to Punjab, there was no English until the 6th grade when we started learning A, B, C, D. And there was little kid book. Teacher, and by that time I had read enough that he recognized it. And he made me a monitor of the English class. But there was a reason, because I had undue advantage. It's how soon, and English then became part of the language, not at home, not with kids, not at college. Read a lot of, obviously, small kid stories like Treasure Island and Victor Hugo's books and stuff like that. Then it became part of the nature. I read a lot of fiction, read a lot of science, any books.
मुझे ये बताइए कि मेरा ख्याल ये है कि आप जो पाकिस्तान से बाहर हैं, और ये जो हमने प्रोजेक्ट शुरू किया है इंटरव्यूज का या कन्वर्सेशन का, इसका भी पर्पस ये है, मेरा ख्याल ये है कि ये जो क्रॉस कल्चरल कम्युनिकेशन है, ये अगर इसकी नेटवर्किंग बेहतर हो ग्रेजुअली, तो ये काफी अच्छा इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है बैक होम पाकिस्तानी सोसाइटी पे, इस एक्सपोयर का। इसको फर्दर जो है वो आगे बढ़ाने के लिए व्हाट आर योर आइडियाज? आपका क्या ख्याल है इस पे? डू यू एग्री कि ये हेल्पफुल हो सकता, और फर्दर इसको हम कैसे नेटवर्क को एक्सपेंड कर सकते?
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, हमारे यहाँ जो पाकिस्तानी कल्चर है, आई कैन डिवाइड इट इन 3 सेगमेंट्स। पहला तो ये है जो हम साथ लाए हैं, my generation. As I said, we have the same limits, similar culture, similar love, and similar bonding for each other, and particularly for our family. Is the second generation. They're born and raised here. They speak English. They can also speak Urdu because they've been to Pakistan many as kids, and they उनके जो दोस्ती थी वहीं grow उनकी cousins. They speak Urdu very well. That's not true for every Desi family. Their second generation, if they had not been to Pakistan, not exposed to Pakistani culture, language, may think different. Third generation, मेरे grandkids, there was a special effort made and has to be made in the family to try to nurture them in the environment that we feel is conducive to the culture, to the mindset, to the temperament we want to establish and model it at. तो हमारी कोशिश यही रही कि हम हमारे grandkids के साथ भी करें. So responding to that question in a general way is very difficult. One of the things that we can do is we have friends that we don't meet as often now, where discussions should be more what I would call intellectual level. हमारे यहाँ मुश्किल ये होती है कि default discussion becomes part. Pakistan में, when I go there, most of the time, TV is set on a talk show. And what are they talking about? Nonsense. In my opinion, nonsense. They become experts. That's what we are always listening to. That's what we are being trained to. So somehow we need to divorce ourselves from that narrative, from those pundits, from those opinion makers, and start talking about things make more sense. And that's where it starts with small groups, and small groups can make difference.
ये जो मैंने शुरू किया आपके साथ पहले भी बात हुई थी, इसमें कुछ इंटरव्यू हम कर चुके हैं और एक हमारा डायलॉग के नाम से फोर्टनाइटली हम इकट्ठे होते हैं, ऑनलाइन ही होते हैं. उसमें अब जो ओवरसीज हैं कुछ दोस्त वो भी शामिल होना शुरू हो गए हैं. तो हमारा ख्याल ये है कि ग्रेजुअली ये नेटवर्क जो है वो ग्रो करेगा और इस तरह की जो कम्युनिकेशन है क्रॉस कल्चरल, उससे काफी हमें हेल्प मिलेगी चीजों को समझने में और बेहतर करने.
I've seen a couple of episodes of that. It's where you actually meet physically. There's a table set up and people.
हम दोनों कर रहे हैं. एक तो हम फिजिकली ऑन ग्राउंड भी कर रहे हैं, उसके अलावा एक हम ऑनलाइन जो है वो मुकालमा के नाम से वो ऑनलाइन हम कर. दो चीजें हैं जो हम कर रहे हैं. और ये जो सीरीज है जिस तरह आपसे गुफ्तगू हो रही है, इस तरह बाकी कुछ दोस्तों से भी गुफ्तगू हुई, उनमें से भी कुछ जो अपने जो एरिया उनका जिस पे बात करना चाहते हैं उनको हम इनवाइट करते हैं. तो काफी ये मुझे इंटरेस्टिंग भी लगा है और यूजफुल भी लगा. हम चाहेंगे कि आप भी शामिल रहें और आपकी तरफ से भी हमें सपोर्ट जो है वो मिलती रहे और कुछ और लोगों से भी आप कनेक्ट करने में हमारी मदद करें. इसके अलावा जो एक सवाल मैं आपसे पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि आप अपनी रीडिंग आपकी बहुत अच्छी है, तो अगर कभी आप सोचें कि आपने अपने ऊपर कोई किताब लिखनी है तो उसका क्या टाइटल रखेंगे?
Lost. L-O-S-T. So I'm just kidding. Book writing is so difficult even for me to imagine. कुछ लोग हैं जिन्होंने rightly or wrongly तजवीज़ किया है कि I should write a book. मेरा जवाब हमेशा ये होता है कि first of all, you have to have fierce loyalty to the subject you're writing about, number one. And you need to have, second, creative writing skills, which I don't have. But I don't consider myself to be a creative writer. So if I were to write a book about myself, I wouldn't be able to convey that I want to convey candidly. And second of all, I'm not even an interesting topic to write about. Lost is the first thing that comes to mind. Been to cultures, I've experienced things, I've experienced people, I experienced a work life, experienced a family life. I'm a student of history. And when you think about all of that and say, what am I? I don't have an answer. I really don't. My outlet, especially after I retired and slightly before that, became doing whatever I can through Facebook in expressing some straight, whether people like them or not.
Yeah, बड़ा अच्छा
People think
लिखते
it's
हैं.
too much. All I do, because that's become my hobby. I'm reflected in my musings on Facebook. As I said, I'm honored to be on your show. It truly is a privilege.
So kind of you. Thank you very much. It was a lovely talk with you. Very, very enjoyable conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay blessed.